All right, let's get things started. Appreciate everyone taking their time today. Welcome to our live demo here. Is your org ready for the Agentic era? Unlock AI-driven insights and deploy Agentforce faster. This is really exciting for us. Myself, Jeremy, Taylor, last time we were presented together was at Dreamforce. There was a lot of fun. We had a couple products booths there. We were on the AI landing stage. Myself, for people who don't know me, I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Hubbl. Mike Bogan here, been in the ecosystem over 11 years, helped grow a consulting partner traction on demand from about 20 people up to 1,500. And then it was acquired by Salesforce, and that's where I met Jeremy and worked on all kinds of projects with Jeremy. Do you want to do quick intros? Hand over to
Yeah, absolutely. Got to do a whole bunch of really interesting projects for products for projects there, basically. As part of consulting and all the kind of cool tools you can use to help implement things for our customers. And then eventually, I ended up kind of joining the internal innovation team and joining Hubbl from there.
Hey guys, I'm Taylor Lint. I'm the founder and CEO of Swantide. I'm excited to share more about Swantide with you all. My background's in software engineering. So prior to starting Swantide, I built products at LinkedIn and Alphabet that were automating large professional services industries. So that's how I came into the ecosystem and started solving this problem. So excited to show you guys.
Yeah, it's so exciting working with Taylor and the Swantide team. You'll get a good flavor for how things come together. It's really cool. Agentforce. Let's just start off with some of the standard sort of building blocks. I don't want to go deep into this. There's been a lot of hype. I'm sure a lot of you have seen a lot of the talks. You may even build agents yourselves. The basic concept here that we want to drive home, of course, is that the typical building blocks. So it's basically broken down by that concept of jobs to be done, essentially the topics of those agents, the instructions that fall within each of those topics, and the actions that can actually be used by the agents. And the actions, these are obviously the key part of Agentforce, because not only can those agents understand the questions that the user will ask, but they can select from a set of actions to actually execute. And those actions are built on top of declarative automations, whether it's Flow, and then also on Apex triggers. And so deploying Agentforce is really about understanding and finding the next set of actions that you want your agents to automate. And Salesforce right now, in this early stages, is focused on that rollout of service and SDR agents. But in the long run, essentially what organizations are going to be doing is exploring where they can build platform agents across all the custom processes that define their business. And so obviously this says the building blocks of service agents, but it's the building blocks of sales agents. It's the building blocks of platform agents. These agents will be able to go and perform actions and engage with customers across your entire business. So what we want to talk about today is a set of live demos that show you a process of how you can explore an organization and start deploying Agentforce faster across that organization. And this framework is essentially what we're going to discuss today, and that's where it really comes into place, is looking at those platform agents. We'll talk about leveraging data-driven business process workshops to uncover the frequent variants that you have in an organization, but also the bottlenecks that are in your organization. And then once you've identified an area where you actually want to pinpoint and build the agent, you can actually leverage Hubbl Diagnostics to use AI to overcome technical debt that might be in there if you're in a brownfield org, for example. And then we'll discuss how you can customize and deploy pre-configured agents using Swantide's workflow. And then whatever automations you've actually built, whether they're coming in from agents or any custom automations you have on your platform, you want to be able to visualize the ROI and actually improve your onboarding and change management. So we'll look at that through a visualization perspective as well. So let's dig in. And like I said, for those who are coming in, we want this to be interactive. This is a set of live demos. So we'll have a set of segue slides that'll go into some demos. Feel free to ask questions as we go, and we'll try to keep up with them in the chat here. So first up, let's talk about this concept of data-driven business process workshops. So, many of you have done this. Almost everyone in the Salesforce ecosystem has gone through that process of engaging with stakeholders. And so imagine walking into a business process workshop already knowing where the organization's bottlenecks were located, and this type of insight can actually help focus the conversations on the key aspects of a process that needs to be accelerated. And this makes the business analyst more efficient, and it also saves stakeholder time. It leads to better design outcomes. That traditional process of discovery in business processes where it's kind of slow and prone to error because of lack of information. Sometimes the discovery team is organizing stakeholders into a meeting, walking through those current state processes with them, generating the process map, validating it with the stakeholders, completing that feature state process mapping, and then designing the process and the related automation, and then building. And what's interesting about this is that oftentimes you're actually like that process leads to builds that are designed on incomplete information because the right stakeholders weren't present, or the stakeholders that were present didn't have the full picture. And there's basically unknown automations that might have caused deviations in there. So this approach of using the first process mining application on the Salesforce, built on the Salesforce platform, helps you do data-driven discoveries and leads to better design outcomes, because the insights are actually derived from what's actually happening in the current state business process, and it leaves nothing overlooked. And so the fastest way to do this on Salesforce is the Hubbl Process Analytics app. It's an app exchange app that we launched from Hubbl Technologies, and it's purpose-built for Agentforce. It actually automatically identifies bottlenecks and visualizes the ROI. So for example, if you're actually wanted to leverage the new service agent, you can optimize the case process in Service Cloud. You can install the app, and in less than 15 minutes, Jeremy will show you how you can visualize all the cases in an org and how they progress through the statuses open from the case to close. And then once you have that visualization, you can actually get a clear indication of the bottlenecks, and it's much easier to communicate with stakeholders. So let's dig into process analytics. And again, let's keep this open for discussion and give you a sense of what's going on the platform.
Yeah, right on. Cool. So here's process analytics. So what we're looking at is real data and what's actually happening in the org, right? And the way that easiest way to think about that is just by looking at all these steps, we can look at the most common process in an org for a case, right? Which is probably something along the lines of, I create a new case, I work on it, and I close it. And as we run through all the iterations of all the cases that happen in an org, there are these different variants that kind of spawn out where something else happens, right? Maybe we talk back and forth with the customer. Maybe we put them on hold for a little bit. And eventually we run through and get all of the different things that have happened in this case process. Here we've got a very simple one. All of these boxes represent steps that are happening in the process. All of these arrows represent the different directions that people take from all the different steps that have happened in that process, right? So, cases always start by going into working, but then from there, sometimes you end up waiting for customers. Sometimes they go on hold, all these different things. The thickness of the arrow represents how many records. You can like switch views and things like that to see kind of how many records are going down certain paths. And then the color represents relative speed. So you can see where there might be bottlenecks or places where you might want to actually go and implement agents to save time. Or this is where potentially, cases are getting hung up and things like that. So for example, if you look at one of these kind of thicker red arrows, that's an area where a lot of records are taking a long time to go through that particular step in a process. And we can drill down into that, and we can look and see, is this something that has to do with a particular person? Is this something that has to do with a particular case type? And so for example, here we can see order statuses. These are pretty quick. Sometimes we have to like ask the customer for some information, and it takes them about a day on average to get back to us with probably something like an order number so that we can give them an order status update. But things like gift cards and promotions take sometimes multiple weeks. And maybe that's because there's a much more complicated process there that involves having to like get more, credit card information back from them because they've already thrown away their gift cards, so you can't refund the gift card, things like that. But basically we have the ability to kind of like break down parts of a process and then go and look at them as well. This is a case process. We support, any process, any object, multiple objects, things like that. It can get more complicated, of course, but we'll stick with our simple sales service example here and just sort of look at, some of the basic features. Effectively, there's kind of two main places where you'll get like really good high level insights on what's going on in your process. One is this kind of drill down process where you can go and kind of figure out where your bottlenecks might be and which particular kind of attributes are contributing to slowdowns and things like that. One of the things that we do is kind of go through all the iterations of all these steps and all these variants and like go and pull out anything that we find interesting in the form of insights that we have on this left-hand panel. The other is also by comparing. So once we've found something interesting that we think might be worth looking more into, maybe there's a particular step that is slow, maybe there's a particular case type, or maybe you've got like newer employees that are struggling and you've got an adoption problem or something like that. You can then go in and drill into that specifically and then save your views and compare them. Once you have a comparison, then you can go and see those side by side. For example, maybe you want to do kind of a before and after. That's a really common one. We have a bunch of different types of filters. One of those is the ability to see before and after you've kind of implemented something. So if we're looking at Agentforce, a lot of people want to know if it works, right? So we've got these kind of side-by-side comparison views. We'll look at our service example where we can actually save two of those views, put them side by side, and then actually overlap them on top of each other and see kind of where we're saving time. So especially if we've tried to implement something in a particular area, you can go and look and see, okay, we've tried to maybe perhaps make this like step where we're waiting for the customer quicker by adding some kind of follow-up email that sends them to an agent to ask them for additional information so that we don't have to necessarily have a person constantly following up with them. Agents are always online, always available. People, they work 9 to 5 and things like that. And so we can actually see that in the before, which is the gray, and then the after, which is the blue, we've actually made like a significant improvement in that particular step where we've gone from like a 2-week average down to a 4-day average and things like that. So it gives us a really good ability to kind of go and actually see, the before and after, but these could be any comparisons, right? Any attributes. You could look at product A versus product B, a new employee versus the overall average, or your top performer, things like that. Lots of different ways to kind of compare views and actually see how they're impacting the process at any step in that process.
Yeah, and this is really key for helping you identify areas that you want to build an agent, where you want to get deeper into the org and actually build some automation that's in there, and then obviously getting an understanding of what to see in that before and after. Digging into, a common question asked if you just look at a simple visualization in a single view is, the information that's driving this view is actually coming from the field history tracking. And this gives you a sense of where these views are actually coming from. If you want to expand on that, Jeremy.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So anytime you make a change to a field in Salesforce, if you've got field history tracking on that, it's logged. And all of those kind of event series time-stamped data points allow us to kind of give a story of what's going on in a record, right? And so when we talk about process mining, really we're mining those events that are happening. There's really only 3 key data points that we need. So we need a record ID that represents kind of a run-through of the process. Think a case for a service process, an opportunity for a sales process, and then an event and a timestamp. An event can be a field change. It can be a related record being created, an email being sent. It can be a lot of different things. And then a timestamp, of course, Salesforce timestamps pretty much everything that you do in the org. So definitely something we'll typically have. But even it could be like, a time field on a record and things like that as well. What we do is we have a wizard that'll actually let you go and step through and then pull out records really easily. And because it's all on platform, you can do that in just a few clicks. I'll run through that really quickly of what just kind of creating this view looks like from installation. So if we go ahead and just use like the predefined opportunity example, we have the ability to pre-filter if we want. We can pick fields that we think might be interesting data points, the same kind of fields you'd pull into any standard report, but also sometimes things you might specifically be curious about time-related information on. And then a date range. And that's pretty much all you need to do to create a visualization. So it's a really simple process because it's on platform. There's no real data prep. And from there, you'll be able to get a visualization that looks something like this in a couple of minutes. That thing will run in the background. Usually takes about maybe like 2 to 5 minutes, depending on the size of your data. And you'll get a visualization right off of the install. And that lets you show, high level what's going on in your org by the actual data behind the scenes that's, running your objects.
Right. And so if you think about that, once you've identified an area that you're digging into, you get some visualizations of what's actually happening. You're working in those stakeholder workshops. Now you want to move into the design of the actual automation that you're going to leverage. And this is where, if most people are building on top of a brownfield organization, an org that's already has automation built inside of it. And so this is where we shift gears, and Jeremy, I'll just take over to share the Hubbl Diagnostics side of things. So essentially what we've been looking at is the data inside of the organization using the Hubbl Process Analytics App Exchange app. Once you're shifting into building that automation and getting a sense of what you actually want to build, now you are interested in that metadata that's in there. And so whether you're building a new agent or any form of new automation on Salesforce, oftentimes that existing automation, that existing build that's in the org, basically there's a lot happening already that can complicate the build of what you're trying to achieve. And so this is where Hubbl Diagnostics comes in, and it actually allows you to look at the metadata in the org, how it's configured, and in minutes you get this personalized game plan to how to optimize the entire org. And now if you're focused on an agent, so for example, we dug into the case process there, you can narrow in on that specific process and optimize it. Another key thing to remember is that the agent actions that you'd be building, they're made of flows and triggers. So a really important thing to understand is that when you're looking at, if you're building an agent on top of case and you want to start having some agent actions in there, you need to get an understanding of whether your automations that are pre-built are actually flows and triggers versus workflow and process builders. This is where Hubbl really helps you for that Agentforce readiness. Is your org actually ready for the agentic era? Using a couple components that I'll show you here in a second. So the Hubbl Diagnostics platform, it's very straightforward, connecting to your org and analyzing an org. This is the results for a single org. And what you can see is a set of results that are organized over a series of tabs. In no way we'll have time to go through all of the results that we have here, but I'm just clicking through them to show you this is a very highly visual way to understand how an org is configured. And we'll dig into a few examples here. So one example, I mentioned that concept of agent actions being made of flows and triggers. So one of the things we do is we actually measure the amount of declarative automation in the entire org and give you a sense of where your org stands in the build of flow, in that migration flow, because Salesforce has deprecated workflow and process builders. We are obviously understand the reason why with the rise of Agentforce, but this basically shows you where your organization stands relative to all the other orgs that have been analyzed in the ecosystem, and we benchmark it. So if in this example, this org has more flow than the average org out there, but some organizations are way behind in their migration to flow. And this means that of all the custom automation that they've been built in their org, there's less opportunity to leverage that existing automation to build agents. This helps you sort of have your conversations with your executives around migrating into flow so you can leverage Agentforce in the future. So if we dig into, let's think about that example we were looking at where we were digging into a specific process. So what this is showing you is the object automation tab. Here we're looking at all the objects in the org that have record triggered automation, whether it's triggers, workflows, process builders, and flow. We were looking at the case object earlier in process analytics. So if we dig into the case object, we can see all of the automations that have been built in this particular org on the case object. It also shows you the events that they're firing on, whether they're active or not. And this allows you to get an understanding of all those existing automations that are in the case object that might be available for you to leverage in your agent actions, or ones that need to be like these process builders or workflows that you might need to migrate to flow if you want to execute those custom agent actions that you're building. These can be, you can leverage filters up top to look at ones that are packaged, for example. Just show me the active automations that are on this particular object. This allows you to dig in and get an understanding of what's happening there. One of the challenges we see, though, in these orgs is that the existing automation that's in there, people have not been documenting these orgs very well. So there's no descriptions in the metadata. What we found is about 20% of the custom metadata has no description in it. And the way agents work is they're leveraging the metadata in an org. And if there's no description on that metadata, it becomes very challenging for that agent to actually function properly. And so leveraging the Swantide integration, we can actually go to any of the automation in the org and pre-build a prompt that allows us to work with the AI assistant to actually have a conversation to understand what is the actual automation doing on that specific piece of metadata. And this is really critical because this helps you understand, as you're building out these agents, what you could and couldn't leverage, where you might be having conflicts, and this will help you get moving faster in terms of your Agentforce deployment. And so you can see the agent now is creating the description that you can leverage, and you can actually obviously even use that description to deploy into the org itself. So now your metadata will have those descriptions as well. So this is a powerful way to get an understanding of the automation. That, we saw the case process and how the data is moving through. Now you're looking at how all the automations are running on the case object. There might be some other challenges in there. So sometimes what we see, for example, is in the custom code, there might be security issues in that custom code. So we scan across the entire org. And what Diagnostics is showing you is some high severity security issues that are inside of the org. We can get an understanding of what those specific security issues are, the line items of where to fix them. But most importantly, we look across the entire org, and we don't just, you don't need to know all of these rules. We actually classify the issues that are uncovered by the severity of the issue in the org and the level of effort to address them. So you can actually dig in and get a personalized roadmap of how to optimize the org itself. So for example, these SOCL injection issues, if you have these issues in code that's exposed inside of Experience Cloud, where you may be building an agent to interact with a customer, you can come in and again, identify the specific issues, the line number where that code has an issue, but you can even go in and actually leverage the Swantide agent again, using those pre-built prompts. And this is amazing because this actually allows you to, in minutes, have a conversation with the Swantide this AI assistant to generate the code that can be used, proposed codes to actually fix these particular issues. So what you can see so far is sort of that full circle understanding of what are all the processes inside of the org, where are the areas where I might have frequent variants that I'm working in, where I might want to leverage some agents. Then I can dig into the org and actually get an understanding of what code is inside of the org that might be interacting with these agents and being leveraged by these agents, and finding a way to actually optimize those agents and that code as well. I'll let this fish finish. A couple of other pieces in here that are really important on these processes is understanding how the fields are being utilized, so the field utilization perspective. So as you're walking through those different stages in the process map that was there, you would actually see how individual fields are being used on a record basis. So this is showing you the number of fields, the number of records in this org that have a set of records inside of it that have a value for this specific field. And this helps you understand, which specific fields are useful or not in some of these agents. And sometimes, you might be designing an agent that's interacting with fields that aren't being utilized at all. And this is something you definitely want to dig into. Let me grab that again. I'll try this one more time. So you can see with the, once you put the prompt, the pre-built prompt into the Swantide AI assistant, it generates the code that you can use to actually fix that particular issue on that code that you were looking at. And you can think about this as, so now we've mapped out the entire process. We've identified the area we want to build. We have existing automations. We've improved and actually built the descriptions that fill in the missing metadata descriptions that are in there. And we've uncovered issues that might be in the code supporting it and automatically generated the code that could be proposed to use to fix that. And this is all just happening literally within minutes. So just incredible pace that we can get in identifying and pinpointing where we want to deploy those agents. And the amazing thing about this is that it just keeps getting more and more exciting, because now what we want to do is we want to leverage these agents. And just a couple slides here of the stuff that I was showing you already around leveraging the Swantide AI assistant. But now what we want to do is actually dig in and actually customize and deploy pre-configured agents. So you saw that process map that Jeremy was looking at. We identified that frequent variance. We fixed up the code that's underlying it. And now we want to start leveraging Swantide workflows to even automate the deployment of these agents in Hubbl.
Thanks, Mike. Are you able to give me screen share access?
Yeah, for sure. You should have.
So excited to show you guys how you can deploy these agents that we have some pre-built in Swantide, and then also for those of you that are SIs, you can build your own as accelerators to deploy custom agents to your clients as they're exploring Agentforce.
Sorry, Taylor, didn't have you. You should be set up now.
Okay. I'm still not seeing access to share.
You are a co-host.
Oh, it did mute you on entry, I think, Taylor. But
Okay,
great. I have access now. So,
like we said, right? This is a collection of live
Okay.
demos. Let's do it right. And like I said before, anyone, if you have questions, feel free to dig in and ask us any questions as well.
Yes, please do. So right now, you guys are looking at the Swantide platform. We were looking at, you guys saw the AI assistant in the demo that Mike was giving through the Chrome extension. It's also available in here. You can ask any questions, and we have documentation always available for your org as well. When you connect Swantide, we pull down all of the metadata. We generate that documentation using AI. And so we have a representation of your org that allows us to answer those questions, have the documentation, and then also actually make changes to the org through our workflows product. So what I'm going to show you guys is deploying an Agentforce, a service agent. We're going to do it together. So I've connected to this org here that you guys can see. You can see we're in the back now in Agent Builder, and we have 4 agents in here, and we're going to add another one right now. So this workflow, these are templates that in this case our team built. But again, if you're an SI, you could build these as well, or you could leverage ours. And so in this case, this workflow is going to create a Gen AI planner and create a Gen AI bot. So we're going to customize this now. So we're going to name our agent. I'm going to call this Hubbl Demo Agent. We've already got some descriptions in here about Swantide pre-populated, and I'm going to choose my tone. I'm going to say this is a casual agent. And so now as I'm hitting deploy, what this is actually doing, it's taking those responses that I just put in and it's inserting them into the GenAI planner and the bot that we just selected. So let's see why this is not working, and great. So live demos are really fun. Let me refresh. Okay. So let's see. Why did this? Okay. If not, we'll go in and take a look at some of the agents that are already in there. Okay, there it worked because there we go. Sorry, guys. So here's our Hubbl demo agent. We can see right now, this agent doesn't have any topics or action. It just has one action assigned to it, but no topic. So it doesn't have any jobs yet. Let's assign it some jobs from Swantide. We'll go back to our Agentforce workflows. And so I'm going to be able to choose from some jobs that are both the default out of the box ones from Salesforce, as well as some of those from Swantide. So I'm going to do this general FAQ, and I'm going to choose the Hubbl demo agent that I just created to add this to, but I could add it to any other agent in my org. And then I'm going to also turn on this order management. Okay, so that one was successful. And this order management is a custom one built by Swantide. And so if we take a look at what's going to be created here, we have 2 flows, 2 GenAI functions, a plugin and a planner that are all going to be created and customized at time of deployment. So I'm going to choose again which agent I want to add this to. And in this case, we're customizing the 2 underlying flows for what's the unique identifier in the org I'm connected to for order number. So I could choose I could have chosen any of the custom fields there from my org, and it would actually inject the reference to that custom field into my flows or my GenAI functions, wherever it's configured in the template. So now if we refresh this, okay, so our first topic has been inserted, the general FAQ, and we'll give this a second because it has to create a lot of metadata in this case. We're creating the 2 flows and the functions and the plugin. We'll see these here. We should see these here in a second once they get added. So we'll give it a second. And so we have Agentforce workflows. We're continuing to add to this library. Okay, great. And so now we can see Swantide order management. Again, that's a custom topic with custom actions. And it's been customized to my org to the custom field that I use for order number. So we can see this custom action in here. All of this was built by Swantide, bundled up into a template, and is accessible in our library. And so now your agent is ready to start helping with order management and general FAQ. And we did that in just a couple of minutes.
Amazing. So, I mean, obviously, once you deploy these agents or any automation, like Taylor said, the Swantide workflow can be leveraged to do deploy any automation that you want in there. You want to get an understanding of how that automation has impacted the organization, and you want to onboard. Your employees to and deal with sort of the change management and training that comes with this, and that's where you can think about the stuff that Jeremy was showing us earlier with regards to process analytics and the way you're visualizing the impact of that actual automation in the organization. And so if you think about this, any type of visualization that allows you to get an understanding of what's happening helps you communicate with your employees and your executives. For example, that order management scenario that we were just discussing on the case object there, you could take a look at that before scenario and as well as the after scenario, and get an understanding of the actual impact. So there's, the scenario of the customer is looking for sort of order numbers, things like that. You can actually speed that up with your agents, and in this example, we're cutting off about 10 days in the actual average case process time. And being able to share those visualizations and the before-after impact of agents to those executives basically helps communicate that ROI immediately. And what's cool about this is that having clear ROI accelerates the demand for the future custom agents. Repeating that whole process over and over again. So you think about everything that we've gone through today. You are now, once you've deployed that first agent, now you've got that ROI. And now you can actually go back to the very beginning and how Jeremy, let's take a look at that again, actually, where you actually walk through the build of an individual process view. Because the way to think about this is we just talked through sort of that case flow. Now you can think about, now I'm going in and my team has identified an area of the business where we want to dig in a bit deeper. And maybe I want to look at some custom object that we've built where Salesforce doesn't have a pre-configured agent. Now we want to actually visualize what's happening on that custom object.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll go through the custom flow just to show a little bit more about what you can do with the wizard. I'll still show the opportunity object just because I think that's one everyone will understand, but this could be any custom object. And then it lets us kind of go in and pick kind of the breakdown of that. And we can pick multi-object as well. And if we do that, it'll also let us pull in related objects and things like that. So if we did want to pull in like orders or leads or things like that, we could. Yeah, we could do both of them up. Right, so we could pull in like leads into opportunities into orders and be able to see that full flow. And we could actually go through and do that whole setup there as well. In this case, we'd go and pick any of the fields that we wanted to as well. We'll just like pull maybe like owner, for example. And then again, kind of pick our dates. And then we'd be able to get a visualization that goes and looks at those multiple objects as well, and then go and look at that, right? Once we find another process that we might want to go and deal with. And then it's the same kind of iterative process where we, again, like now see, okay, how have we either, made an improvement or, now we have some new process that we want to look at. And again, you kind of go through that process again of drilling into the areas where you see these thick red lines and finding, new bottlenecks or new room for places for improvement where you can implement your next agent and so on.
And so by going that full circle, you can work across the entire organization. And essentially, that's the way we see things rolling out. So Salesforce, obviously, we've got, we're in the first iteration of Agentforce. We've got Agentforce 2.0 coming up in 15 minutes here. We won't hold you back if you're going to catch Benny off in the next 15 minutes. But basically, Agentforce will be rolling out across the entire organization, and you need to get an understanding of where to deploy those agents across the organization, to deploy them quickly, understand the ROI, and keep moving. So hopefully that gives you a sense, some ideas around how to leverage Hubbl Diagnostics, Hubbl Process Analytics, and Swantide to accelerate your Agentforce deployments. And so if you're interested in digging in a bit deeper, getting understanding, it's really simple to get started. So you can grab this QR code if you want, or you just go ahead to Hubbl.com to get moving on Hubbl Diagnostics. It takes a couple minutes just to create an account and analyze your org. You get that personalized game plan right out of the gate. It'll also do a custom code security review. Process Analytics, you can grab that from the App Exchange, install that in any sandbox in production, wherever you want to take a look at that information. Again, you need that field history tracking information, so best used inside of a full sandbox or partial dev. And then obviously for Swantide, working at individual orgs and the size of the orgs, you definitely want to contact Taylor, reach out and get moving on Swantide. In terms of pricing on diagnostics and process analytics, they start at $5,000 per year for org. our overall effort is around democratizing success across the ecosystem. So these products are accessible to the smallest and largest organizations. And then starting at $5,000 and a limited time, we're bundling these two products together as well. The Swantide product scales with the size of the organization. So definitely want to connect with Taylor to get an understanding on the pricing there. And so with that, we thank everyone for your time and attention, and definitely want to open up to any questions if anyone has anything. But don't want to hold you back from hanging out with Agentforce 2.0 if you haven't seen the many announcements that Mark's got coming up next. And if there's no questions, which I don't see anything coming in, then we wish you all the best for the holidays if we don't see you. And thanks for taking the time today.